Friday sale. Open Polo.ai now. Enjoy 20% off. As a one-stop AI generation platform, Polo...
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Wednesday night webinar. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining. If you're looking for help for OCD-related conditions, check us out at nocd.com. Bringing you me live tonight, Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer at NoCD. And that NoCD work, well, with hoarding and body-focused repetitive behaviors and tics as well. And we work with depression and trauma and some BDD. And you know what? We also do one of my favorite things, the NoCD 411 session. It's a session if you're maybe looking for info about OCD. It's not a therapy session, but you want to talk to someone who's an expert in this. Well, we'd be happy to set up some time with you to chat as well. That being said, let's get into our questions. See what we got going on today. History Maker says, I've been struggling the last couple of days with worrying about making mistakes when looking after my animals because I have done that in the past. Is there any way to deal with the stress? Yes. First of all, the more you try to perfect taking care of your animals, the worse you will feel. Now, that may sound strange, right? But I'm going to bet that if we polled anybody out there tonight listening to this, and feel free to put it in the scroll, if they've ever achieved perfection, the answer will be no, they have not. So it isn't going to be about trying to take care of your animals in a perfect way. It is going to be more about learning that you can handle making a mistake. Now, I'm not saying I want you to purposely goof up taking care of your animals. Okay. That is not what I am talking about. But what I do want you to be able to do is learn that you can handle it if you do, right? If you came in for treatment and you talked to me about a fear of, let's say, what if when I went to pay for something, I gave the wrong amount of money? I would not have you practice with me giving me the right amount of money every time to prove to you that you knew how to do it. I would have you practice with me constantly giving me the wrong amount of money and me going, hey, you didn't pay right, until you didn't care about that happening anymore. Right? Now, again, when it comes to animals or something like that, what would that mistake look like? Well, maybe if you give them a full level cup of food, maybe we'll take one little kernel out of it or something like that, right? And so now it won't feel just right because you didn't give them exactly the right amount. Or maybe we'll add one more to it. And oh no, what if we've overfed them now or something of that nature, right? Most people, when they do a scoop, will do a scoop and they put it in and that's it. But OCD might say, no, we do the scoop, but then we take a ruler or something and we put it over the top to make sure that it's absolutely level, and maybe we'll weigh it and it's got to be within this and something like that. And maybe for certain animals you'd have to do something like that, right? Maybe if you're a falconer, right? Where you're going to feed them 3 to 5 ounces of meat twice a day or something of that nature. Okay, so you know those things. But your average animal that I'm thinking you're having at home, like dogs or a cat, something like that, well, they seem to survive well on a can of food or a scoop of food and something of that nature. So you may goof something up. You may make a mistake. And for those who are able to do well in the world, they accept the fact that that can happen. And for those who struggle in the world, it's often because they're trying to eliminate any possibility of that ever happening. And because of the fact that they're trying to eliminate any possibility of that ever happening, all they're doing is finding more and more places where mistakes can be made. And that's where people can get really stuck. Tom Ugsh says, I've been struggling with relationship OCD, intrusive thoughts. At times, I can't tell the difference between intrusive thoughts and if you have legitimate thoughts and concerns about your relationship. One of the most common questions that I get, actually, is that. Now, here's some things to consider. In relationship OCD, we don't care if we've asked the question or come up with an answer to it before. We must do it again and again and again and again until we feel as if it's just right. And since in OCD, we're never going to feel as if it's just right, it will never feel satisfying to have done it. Versus outside of OCD, people will have a discussion maybe about something, or they'll come up with a compromise and they'll agree that that's what it is. And they'll accept in the compromise that, you know what? Neither of us really won in that situation, which I think is great for a relationship. And the ability to have a successful relationship is that it's not about somebody winning in the situation, right? It's about coming up with a compromise in a situation. And that's what we really want to see. You know, I remember, moving in with my wife and having to make decisions about, silverware and plates and the tea kettle and, which, because we were both older when we got married. And so we had a lot of the same stuff, right? Different makers, same stuff kind of things. We had to compromise. It couldn't just be all my stuff, and it wasn't going to be just all her stuff too. So we figured that out. We made those compromises in our relationship. That's a tough thing to do, right? Because, well, naturally, we probably think we're right in many situations. And when we have relationship OCD, we're always going to doubt if we're right, or maybe our doubt is with if the other person's actually ever right, and we think that we are, but and why would we then be with someone who's always making wrong decisions? So then we can question the relationship from that point of view. So in this situation, and I'm just going to go back to the question one more time to put it up there, remind me of a couple of things. First of all, I'll never know exactly what a legitimate thought is. I don't know if I have any legitimate thoughts, and I don't have OCD, but I still can't tell you if my thoughts are legitimate or not. What I do have are thoughts, and I accept having those thoughts. And when I have relationships, I have concerns about the relationship. It's just a normal, natural thing to do, is to have concerns in any relationship you're in. No matter if you're just starting to date, you've been dating for a while, you're newly married, or you've been married for decades. There will still be things in your relationship that you'll be like, I really don't like that about them. I wish they didn't do that anymore. Or maybe I don't like this about myself when this situation occurs, or something of that nature, right? So I'd be less concerned about having to figure out what is or isn't OCD, because then that can lead to somebody saying, oh, well, that's just my OCD, which then can become a compulsion. And then also has an issue of, once I tell myself it's just my OCD, then the rabbit hole of, but this time it feels different than all the other times. So maybe the other times were actually OCD, but this one isn't OCD. And now I really have to go back and check to see if that's the case. Instead of worrying about any of that stuff, accepting the fact that relationships are imperfect. They have doubts. They have insecurities. They have uncertainties. And I'm going to learn to live with them, and I'm going to learn to accept that things don't always go the way that I want, and I'm going to work on compromising. And my goal in exposure and response prevention therapy work is, when exposed to something that could be triggering, instead of having to win in the situation, it's what can we work out as a compromise in the situation. I would try that, Tom, and see how it goes. Diamond Huntress says, I feel a need to remember your confusing, intrusive thoughts so you can figure them out in the future. That will never happen, just so you know. If your goal is to remember things so that you can figure them out in the future, remember that OCD sets up things to be unfigure-outable. So therefore, you're never going to figure them out because, again, they are unfigure-outable. And why are they unfigure-outable? Because they're OCD. So no one in the history of OCD, as far as we know, has ever actually figured out something to the level that OCD has said, congratulations, you've finally done it. You figured it out. Good work. That hasn't happened. That isn't going to happen. You say, any advice for sitting with the discomfort of not knowing the answer? You live in the discomfort of not knowing the answer on a daily basis. You don't know if today might be the day that your house blows over. It's very windy in parts of the country right now. You don't know if today is the day or not that the snow pack on your roof will collapse your home. It's pretty snowy in some parts of the country right now, or maybe even in the world, I should say, because hello to our international friends. You don't know if today is the day that a plane will crash into your home or not, right? Now you might say, yeah, but those are just so little chance. Well, so are all of the things that I've seen happen with OCD too, that OCD loves to take these little chance types of things and blow them out, right? So possibility equals probability in OCD. It doesn't matter how small the possibility is. It is 100% probability to OCD that it is going to occur. And therefore, you better darn well start working on it and prepping for it, right? So you talk about Diamond Huntress, you have a fear of making mistakes. This goes back to what we talked about in the previous answers, right? What's wrong with making a mistake? Now, believe me, I hope my surgeon doesn't make a mistake, right? I think if I need an amputation, I hope that they do the right leg or arm or limb or something like that. And that is why they write on the one that is, well, do not cut on this leg or something like that. Wrong one, that kind of thing. Because we do hope that people won't make mistakes in certain areas, right? But we also know that there is no guarantee that there won't be a mistake made. So every time you go for a surgery, every time you go for a tooth cleaning, every time you walk up and down a flight of stairs, a mistake could be made. So here's the thing. I don't want you to set yourself up for something that is unattainable, which is, I want to be the person that makes no mistakes. Well, you're not going to be that person. And I can say that with very good confidence because we've never met that person. That person has not existed as far as we know. As far as we know, there's no one who has never made a mistake, right? Now, some people may want to debate me on that or anything like that. I say, offer me the proof, right? So, and no one's been able to do so as of yet. So here's the deal. We're humans. We make mistakes. It is what it is. You can accept that, or you could try to fight it. Trying to fight it sure does lead to a lot of discomfort in your life. James says, I'm worried that my doctor will take me off your prescription that has helped you so much and change your life. She has prescribed it every 30 days, and you worry about each month she'll prescribe it or not. What's good exposure and response prevention therapy? Well, James, she may or may not prescribe it, right? And so let me ask you, James, how is your life better by worrying about this not being there? That's number one question. And if the answer is, well, it's not, it makes it worse, then could it be that the reason you need the medication is because all you're doing is doing things to make things more difficult for yourself, and that's why you continue to need the medication? What if you worked on accepting the fact that they may or may not prescribe it, and in doing so, you had less and less worry about it not being there, and in doing so, your mental health improved so much that you didn't actually need your medication? Contemplate that one, folks, and see what you think about that. But isn't that interesting? What if my worrying about needing the meds becomes all the anxiety producing thing that leads me to need the meds? And what if learning that I could handle not having the meds decreases my anxiety to the point that maybe I don't actually need the meds? Let's mull that one over for a while. See what we think. All right. And we skipped over one I know there. So let me see. Let me go back. Oh, there it is. Manny says, I had a fear that I was doing ERP wrong to the point that doing it was giving me anxiety attacks and pushing through, but with fear and uncomfortable. Any tips? Well, you may or may not do it right or wrong, Manny, right? When I set up ERP with people, it isn't to do it perfectly. Now, this is one of those instances where OCD might come along and try to hijack OCD treatment, because OCD might say, okay, fine. You want to get rid of me? I mean, I think that's a really stupid choice, but whatever. Okay, so if you're going to get rid of me, then here's the deal. The only way to get rid of me is to perfectly do the therapy to get rid of me. This is another instance of OCD interfering with OCD treatment. And in doing so, OCD keeps OCD around because no one can ever do therapy perfectly. And because of that, you will stay stuck in OCD if that's the case. So it isn't about perfectly doing the treatment. It's about learning the basic principles of ERP, which is I can be exposed to things that are uncomfortable, things that lead me to feel, doubt, shame, disgust, anxiety, discomfort, whatever it might be. And I can allow myself to live with that by not doing safety behaviors to immediately make it go away, but to just habituate to it, or to practice living with it so many times without doing the safety behavior, but by going and facing the fear and being with it, that by doing that so many times, it actually inhibits my ability to go back to the old way of doing it because I've ingrained a new behavior into my life. However it works, that's what can happen. So it's never going to be about doing ERP perfectly. Okay. I don't want anybody to do perfect ERP because A, it's impossible. And B, it means that OCD has taken over the ERP experience as a way to get you to not do ERP. Hope that makes sense. Can OCD change your values? I've not seen OCD change values, but I've definitely seen people worry about what if OCD changes my values. OCD is not a value changer, though, right? OCD doesn't make you do anything. OCD is more of a fear of what if I were to do something. But if OCD actually made you do things, then guess what I would do? I would say, do all of the compulsions that you possibly can at all times. And if we go back into just recently as the 1960s, that was one of the prevailing beliefs, is that the reason people with OCD didn't do some of the taboo types of things they thought about was because of the compulsions. And therefore, we should institutionalize people with OCD and make sure they do these compulsions all of the time, because then that will prevent them from actually doing these things. It was incorrect. It was wrong. And our field is better now because we have better research out there and we understand things in a better way. So OCD doesn't change your values, but it sure gets you to doubt them. No doubt about that. All right. Alyssa says, I'm learning to balance the recent loss of your mother while coping with your OCD. One of your main obsessions was fear of losing her, so I can't help but think I've thought this into existence. Well, then, Alyssa, I'm also wondering if anyone else or everyone else who has ever died that was brought into existence by the fact that someone thought of them dying. And if we could all agree to never think about the death of, let's just pick one random person in the world, right? the person who lives at such and such address on this street in this city. If we could all think only we want that person to live and never once think about them dying, they will live forever. Now, I know when I say that, Alyssa, you hear that and think, well, that's ridiculous. But what if? Right? And remember, what is OCD? It's a yeah, but what if disorder, which is, I know logically this makes no sense. Yeah, but what if it did it anyway? Right? So here's the statement. I don't actually think that my thoughts caused my mom to die. But what if they did? And that's all you need. That's all OCD needs, is that, yeah, but what if experience. And once it has that, yeah, but what if experience, well, then there we go. It's got you hooked, right? So it need not make any sense at all. Zero sense whatsoever. OCD doesn't need things to make sense. It just needs you to have doubt. The smallest amount is all that's necessary. A dash, a skosh, whatever you want to say, of doubt is all that is needed for OCD to grab a hold and go, ooh, now wait a minute. You know, I loved my mom. She was really great. But there was that one time when I was a teenager that I was really mad at her. And I just was like, you're the worst mom ever. I wish you would die. And now she's dead. 50, 40, whatever years later. What did I do that? Is she now dead because of that? By the way, Alyssa, I don't know if you've listened to this before, but if you have, one thing that I'm kind of known for is a card that I carry in my wallet. I don't have it with me. It's upstairs right now, so I can't pull it up. But you can go back to some old webinars and you can see that I have this. And others on here can vouch for it because I've told the story before. Almost 20 years ago, I was working with somebody who had a fear of, if I think something negative about my parents and I don't say a prayer afterwards, they will die. And so we got to a point where we thought negative things about our parents together, like, we hope they twist their leg or their ankle or something like that. We hope they stab their toe. We hope they jam a finger or something like that. And none of those things ever occurred. So then we got to a point of writing down some of them and holding on to them. And we even thought about, there's a chance that today my parents will die. Because there is. For all of us. There's a chance for all of us that today our parents will die. Or that we will die. Or that our friends will die, or our children will die, or something like that. There's always a chance, right? Where it's never at zero. What I did is I said, here's what I'm going to do. And I took out a business card from my wallet that I had from a car that I had just bought. And I wrote down, I hope my parents die tonight. And I put, please God, and I put a 666 on it too. They were Christian, so that's why I did that. I said, here's the deal. I will keep this in my wallet until my parents pass away. It has now been almost 20 years since I wrote that. My parents know it's there. They say, hey, you haven't killed us yet. Congratulations. Alyssa, when my parents die, which they will, I'm under no auspices of the fact that they will live forever. So when they die, will you blame me for their death because that card is in my wallet? Just want you to think about that. Ethan says, I'm a provisional psychologist in Australia who's currently in training. Do you have any advice for someone with a lived experience who is providing treatment to someone with OCD? I do have a little bit of advice for you. And first of all, welcome to the field. Congratulations. Thank you. And we appreciate your service to those who have OCD. And also, congrats to you on really working on your OCD and now kind of going to the other side of wanting to dedicate your life to helping those with OCD. I think that that's absolutely wonderful. Here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, just because you're treating OCD doesn't mean that you don't need help for your own OCD, right? There's nothing wrong about still having a therapist to make sure that you're doing well and staying on top of your ERP and your work. So keep that in mind. And number two, you will get triggered at times, and that's okay. You don't have to have OCD to be triggered by OCD thoughts and images and urges. I can tell you that from experience, that I do hear things from time to time from people and think, oh, wow, that would be really, really hard to deal with, right? But I also don't follow them up with compulsions. I just go, okay, well, let's figure out how to help you with that. So as much as sometimes OCD wants to grab a hold of certain things or says, oh, wait, maybe you could deal with all kinds of OCD, but this subtype, you don't want to deal with that one. Recognize that those are all OCD trickery to get you to not try to be helpful to yourself or to help other people. And we will always push you toward the best thing that you can do is work on helping others. And I think it's a noble thing. And so don't give up on your own work that you've done for yourself to be able to get yourself here. Just because you're in this field doesn't mean that you're immune to OCD or depression or any other things of that nature, right? It happens. Lots of hellos and happy Thanksgivings to everyone. That's so nice to see everybody being here. Let's see. Zenik says, I'm worried that when I was drunk early in my relationship, I might have done something wrong while talking to other girls. The what if question going on once again. Now, Zenik, could I ever give you enough evidence, pro or con, that you actually did it? Right. Your OCD, by the way, would only believe the pro evidence. It would never believe the con evidence. No one's given OCD evidence to the contrary of what OCD says, and OCD has said, oh, well, thank you. That's plenty good evidence. You're right. I was wrong. OCD does not admit to being wrong. OCD says, thank you. That we'll put that in the pile. It's very helpful. Still not quite enough, though, but really working to fill that bucket. But it's a leaky bucket, right? So you can't put enough con information into the bucket of proof that OCD is incorrect, because the bucket just leaks out and you just need to keep filling it and filling it. So, but all you need is one, well, maybe there was this thing, and OCD goes beep, 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 bap, 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 and boom, there it is. There it is. We have confirmation. All hands to all stations. Hands to all stations. We have confirmation. Here it is, right? That's what it will do. It's why I don't try to give people with OCD information to the contrary enough so that they will be like, oh, yeah, you're right. I don't have to worry about that because I know that I can't ever give it enough information. Instead, I work with people on, let's work on recognizing that we can handle the doubt and the uncertainty about that. That is the ultimate goal. Silicon Valley Garage Dog says, my son is 16 years old and he makes loud noise, heavy panting, and exaggerated body shoulder movement and face twisting for hours almost every day. Is this OCD? It's probably a tic, right? It sounds like potentially Tourette's is going on there if it's including both bodily and vocal tics. And so what you want to do is a type of treatment that involves habit reversal training, or HRT. And by the way, we do that here at NoCD if that's something that you're looking for. So you can check us out at nocd.com. But it is in the OCD and related conditions, but it has its own name and form of treatment that you can utilize. So good luck with that. Zenek also constantly wondering about my what ifs early on in my relationships. Here, I'm now avoiding areas or people that remind you of them. Yeah, not surprising, right? That is kind of how it goes. So, multiple things now told ADHD feels overwhelming. Yes, Jennifer, it can feel overwhelming, but here's the good piece. Various things have the right kinds of treatments for them. And so getting the right treatments can be really helpful. Just like you may have a physical thing going on, right? You might be told that you have diabetes. Oh, and we found some precancerous cells too. Lots of things going on, can feel overwhelming. but treatments for both of them. So I say stick to it, and you can come through on the other end if you follow through on the good treatments. Let's see. I just got a therapist, but I have to wait 23 days for your appointment, and you're not doing well with your OCD. Any advice to hold me over till then? Well, I would suggest this. You've got these webinars. You've got the Get to Know OCD podcast. There are some great books out there on OCD. John Grayson, who comes on once a month with us, has a great book on there on overcoming OCD. And the NoCD app has a lot of great therapy tools on it also. So you can get started on those. You can build up a hierarchy for yourself, and it will walk you through doing that and can help you with doing some ERP also. So that might be your first go-to until that therapy session comes along. Don't mind my ASD and OCD. Hey, great name. I like it. First time on here. I'm someone who is recently officially diagnosed with OCD. Well, we're happy to have you here and welcome. And you will find this to be a wonderful crowd who is very, very loving and welcoming of so many people. How to deal with hypersensitivity OCD. Like if there is something kept near, it can be anything, you get distracted. And as it is in my peripheral vision, you cannot unsee that, and it makes you stuck. Well, I know exactly what to practice then, right? Because there's always things in your peripheral vision. There's no way to not have something in your peripheral vision unless you decide to maybe live in the holodeck on Star Trek Next Generation, and you could just create a thing where there's literally, no, you couldn't do that because we don't know what nothing is. I don't think that the human mind can actually contemplate what nothing is. Sorry if you have existential OCD. I don't want this to sound triggering or anything. But what is nothing? I mean, the vastness of space, is still stars and various things out there. So there's matter, antimatter, all these different things. I don't know how you would never have something in your peripheral vision. Now that I say that, guess what I'm paying attention to? My peripheral vision, right? And so I have two options right now. I could try to make myself not pay attention to my peripheral vision, or I can accept that I'm seeing things in my peripheral vision and paying more attention to them now than I have been, and just move on and go with things. And guess what? The likelihood will be in a few minutes, I will forget about the things in my peripheral vision. But if I keep trying not to think of the things in my peripheral vision, all I'm going to do is think about the things in my peripheral vision, and then I'm going to get stuck on my peripheral vision. Boy, you can't even say that after a while. And because of that, I'm going to focus only on that. It's kind of like my tinnitus or tinnitus. It is very loud right now because I just said the word tinnitus, but it will fade into the background in a little bit. And though I will be hearing it, I won't be paying attention to it. Just like though I will be seeing things in my peripheral vision, I won't be paying attention to them. So it's not about making the things in your peripheral vision go away. It's about learning that you don't have to worry about them or be concerned about them. And that takes practice. And that's the practice that a good therapist would do with you if that was the case. Britt says, I have health OCD and your therapist wants you to hold off on getting a new problem checked out, but you're uncomfortable, so it seems not safe. But I also want to practice ERP. So, Britt, here's the deal on health anxiety. Is it actually a new problem, or is it just a variation on a theme, right? If it's a new problem and you've never had this before, this kind of symptom or anything like that whatsoever, I'm no one to stop you from going to see a doctor. But if it's, okay, my blood pressure changed again this time, but this time it changed 4 points instead of 3. Now, the doctor said that if it changes 3 points, it's not a problem, but they didn't say if it was 4 points that it wasn't a problem. She said only 3 points. So therefore, maybe I need to go back to the doctor again just to have something checked out, just to make sure, right? And that's where I want you to really consider what's going on here. Is this actually a new problem, or is this a variation on a theme problem? Just let me know what you think on that one. Okay. Let's see. Help, air hunger. You're experiencing sensory motor OCD. It manifests as a constant physical feeling of air hunger that can only be relieved with a deep breath. What do? You get used to having air hunger. You get used to allowing yourself to feel like you haven't had deep enough of a breath. Now, I would suggest, there's nothing wrong, and this is interesting going with the previous one. Have you been checked out by medical? And have they said that your air volume is fine without needing deep breaths? And you might have even done this already. I know people have bought their own pulse ox and everything. And they're like, yes, I'm getting oxygen, but I'm not getting enough air. All right. We create this crap in our head. That's what OCD does, right? It just creates these ridiculous notions that I don't get enough air in, or I don't expel enough air, or I don't blink my eyes well enough or tight enough to really get the seal on there to really lubricate my eyes the way that I do, or something like, and we do these things somehow under this notion that our body doesn't actually know how to do this. I need to intervene. It's purely some kind of miracle that I've lived up until this long with all of this lack of air that I've had. But now that I know that I have lack of air, I need to do things to make sure that I get all the air that I can get. Well, when I say it out loud, I hope you realize it sounds kind of ridiculous, doesn't it, when I say it that way? And frankly, it is kind of ridiculous, right? But what are we going to do? We're going to learn a couple of things here. We're going to recognize that we can handle the fact that OCD says that it's not quite right. There's nothing wrong with it not being quite right, according to OCD. Boy, I have been talking all day. I've had back-to-back sessions. I can just feel like my jaw hurting, kind of thing. But that's all right. We're going to power through, everyone. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. I promise. Been a while since I've been here. I've been very busy denying that I have OCD. Well, welcome back, Sad Dog. Good to have you back again. All right, let's see. How can I really know if I have OCD without a specialist? Well, you can definitely do some research on OCD. I wouldn't recommend a ton. I would set a time limit, no more than an hour. And you can probably take some online quizzes, right? You can also go to the NoCD app. We're going to have things that are on there that I think could be very helpful to you. And here's the other piece. You can also work on accepting that you have OCD, because I'm going to go with the word specialist there. Is there actually a good enough specialist to go to convince you that you have OCD? And I wonder if there is or not, right? Because sometimes it'll be like, yeah, but how do I really know they're a specialist? Sure, they say they're a specialist, but how do I really know? I need to only see this person, right? And well, they're not taking patients anymore. Well, then I'll never know if I have OCD or something like that. So there are really great clinicians out there here at NoCD who can help you figure that out. If you want to come in, we'll do a diagnostic eval. That's what we do here. And we can help you figure that out. And then we can help you set up for therapy as well. Darla says, my son is here. I told him that you said that there was a Rush song that described OCD. I don't remember what that was. Could you please tell us again? Hold on. Let me think about it. A Rush song that I probably did say that at one time. And now I have to think. Let me get back to you, Darla, on that. Rush song that described OCD. There's one that's really good called The Past that talks about depression. So I would check that one out. And I think that's a good one. Let me just see if there's one other thing. Hold on. Research time. There is... there's a song called Distant Early Warning. There's a line in there, the world weighs on my shoulders, but what am I to do? You sometimes drive me crazy, but I worry about you. I know it makes no difference to what you're going through, but I see the tip of the iceberg and I worry about you, right? So that's definitely about some anxiety and some worry going on in that situation. But Darla, I'll do a little bit more research on that, and maybe I have to come back next week on that one and see. So I will think about it. I'm in a severe OCD relapse focused on incest. One morning, thoughts about my dad triggered a compulsive urge to test, and then he realized I was thinking, and you panicked. You can't forgive yourself. Well, here's the D. You can forgive yourself. That's what you can do. You absolutely can forgive yourself. Do you choose to or not is the question. Or there's another one in here about someone talking about thinking about other girls during a relationship, but you're crazy about your partner. And, what does OCD love to do? OCD loves to say there are topics that are off limits. And you're not allowed to think them, therefore. And if you do, punishment shall ensue, because only terrible, awful, horrible people would think about these types of things. Well, let's contemplate that for a minute. Are there topics that, we probably aren't going to bring up over Thanksgiving dinner? Sure. I can think of many. And make sure don't talk about religion or politics either. But does that mean that we should never think of certain things? Well, no. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't think of something. OCD is saying that you shouldn't think of something, right? You shouldn't think of incest. You shouldn't think of other girls, but then we wouldn't have had Lolita by Nabokov, right? Or considered just an amazing piece of writing, even though the subject matter is so controversial, right? Something of that nature. And then the Police wouldn't have mentioned it in their song, Don't Stand So Close to Me. So I'm not going to be here to preach to anybody that there are topics that are off limits, because I don't believe that that is the case. OCD will say there are definitely topics that are off limits. There are definitely topics that we should not be thinking about. And because of that, we get kind of the pink elephant effect, right? Now, what do we know about our good friend, the pink elephant effect? Well, the moment that we don't want to think of something is the moment, there he is, by the way. Hello, everyone. Is the moment that we are going to think about it. So if we don't want to think about other girls, if we don't want to think about, incest, pedophilia, harm, throw it out there, OCD is sure going to think about it, right? Because the moment we throw something out there in the ether of our mind that says, hey, just remember, don't think or talk about this one, OCD goes, I see your don't think about it, and raise you 12 think about it. And you've got nothing more to bet. OCD's pot is infinite, right? Yours is not. And so OCD will always be able to raise, and you will always have to fold if you play the game with OCD, because I don't know anyone who's played the game with OCD and won, but I do know people who've walked away from the game with OCD and won life by doing that. Okay. Do I have any tips for being a student and being able to manage OCD? I do. So here's a couple of things to think about. OCD will get you to doubt your studies, your knowledge. And you have to accept the fact that going into something like a test means that you aren't going to have perfect knowledge. You won't have perfect recall unless you're Mary Lou Henner. Seems to have it. But otherwise, let's not rely on developing that as the way to be. Right? Something I said, and I even wrote down last week, I wrote it down on a little piece of paper that I have over here, which is if your goal is perfection, the only option is to fail. Wrote it down on that piece of paper right there. You're not the perfect student. Okay. That's not the goal. So instead of trying to be perfect at something, I think accepting that we're human and approaching our studies from that point of view is going to lead us to actually do better in life than trying to be perfect and failing every time at something we're trying to do. Okay. Beth said, the enemy within. I like that one. I think that works good. I'm not giving in to security under pressure. I'm not missing out on the promise of adventure. I'm not giving up on impossible dreams, experience to extremes. There's some interesting lines there. I think I'm going to go with Beth. That's an interesting one. Because this idea of the enemy within is fighting against yourself in some ways, right? When you're stuck in this battle, maybe the yin and the yang. And in fact, Darla Rush wrote an album that's called Counterparts, which is all about yin and yang. Neil at that time was reading a lot of Carl Jung's work and talking about the anima and the animus and everything like that. And there's a song called Animate, which is based on that. And, it talks about dualities and those types of things. And isn't it interesting that there's the one side of the OCD and then there's the other side of successful living. And OCD says the path to successful living is through me. And we say the path through successful living is to turn your back on OCD and go towards successful living. So, but there you go. Oh, okay. So we talked about that one. Oh, and Darla, you got it. Okay, good. Wonderful. There we go. Let's see. Doc, I was in the ER with a blood clot in my calf. They gave you a blood thinner and sent you home. You had a PE several years ago and it nearly killed you, and your health anxiety is triggered. Tips on turning it off. Rob, I hate to tell you this, but someday you're going to die, right? And I hope that doesn't ruin your Thanksgiving whatsoever, but just know that, Rob, someday you are going to die. It could be from a blood clot. It could be from a PE. I've heard pulmonary embolisms, not so fun. It is a possibility, right? So, Rob, I'm going to ask you just to consider this. For the rest of your life, will you give in to your health anxiety and live next to your tombstone only to wonder when you will be 6 feet under it? Or will you live the rest of your life enjoying your life, and on the day of your death arrive at your tombstone and say, well, dang, that was fun? I'm hoping you'll go for option 2, Rob, but I fear that option 1 wins for a lot of people, because in option 1, what happens is, we spend a lot of time worrying about all these what ifs. So I'd like you to really go for option 2 and accept the what ifs instead of worrying about the what ifs. What if I die tomorrow? What if I have another pulmonary? What if I have another pulmonary embolism? Okay. I mean, here's my what if, and I've used this example thousands and thousands of times. What if the ceiling collapses on me before the webinar's done? It might. It's quite windy out there, so who knows? It could happen. I will accept that is a possibility. Okay. So that's what I want you to work on, Rob, is this: enjoy your time that you are alive instead of worrying about all the time that you won't be. And that's what you want to work toward, is acceptance of the fact that instead of trying to prevent my death, I'm going to accept that that it is a possibility. And it could be today. Something about scrupulosity, OCD, and losing ability to do anything in any area. If scrupulosity is going on and you're feeling like it's hard to do things in any area, it could very well be from this notion that I have to be right with a higher power before I can be right with anything else in life. And since you'll never be able to get right with a higher power enough for OCD to say, good job, you've done it, you constantly then will struggle and feel like you won't be able to get right with anything because you won't be able to do enough for the OCD. So I want you to think about that and recognize that the goal is not to be right with a higher power 100%, because how could you ever be and have the confidence that that was the case? It is to know that OCD and faith are diametrically opposed to each other, because OCD says faith is bullshit. OCD says you must have evidence, and faith is the acceptance of something without full evidentiary proof. So it isn't about 100% knowing, it's about accepting. And that's what I love about any OCD work. It isn't about giving somebody with OCD an answer. It's about helping them to live with the question. Now, anyone with OCD, and even people on here, I see that all the time, will say, yeah, but what if, that's fine. But this question is so much worse or awful or horrible or different than all the other ones. And you've never heard this one before. Doesn't matter. Don't care. They're all the same, no matter what. No one has ever thrown one at me that I'm like, you know what? You're right. Wow. That is something that OCD could never even imagine. Nah, OCD can imagine all of it. And it does. It absolutely does. You struggle with ROCD to open to your partner about your difficulties, being very stressed with uncertainties, and she broke up with you the following week. How do you communicate this better? Well, first of all, not to besmirch your person, but was it the right relationship in the first place? I don't know. Because if you're going to be open with somebody about something that's going on and they walk away from you, were they the right person? I don't know. Right. So I can't even say that was the right person for you, Build Wonders. But the other thing is, I don't know how you communicated it. So it's hard to say, how can you communicate it better? But if you go into it saying, just so you know, most of the time we're together, I doubt if I really love you, and and if I'm attracted to you. Not the best way to start off the conversation with relationship OCD concerns. It could be more along the lines of, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. And one of the ways that it manifests is in the theme of relationships. And here's the thing about OCD. It isn't just about washing your hands, and it isn't just about straightening things. Those are the things they show on TV. And those are parts of OCD, but that's not the only parts of OCD. The bigger picture of OCD is it's about doubt and uncertainty. And it often attacks the things that you love the most. You are the person that I love the most in the world. And therefore, my OCD grabs onto you and wants me to doubt my love for you or my attraction to you or something of that nature. I want you to know that I'm working on this because I do want us to be together and I do love you. Something like that is probably a really good way to kind of introduce it. My OCD loves to hide my obsessions. I can't even figure out why I'm afraid, or I dismiss these anxieties so they'll never be addressed. OCD is a sneaky, cheeky little monkey. That is for darn sure. You got that right. There was a murder in Ohio that was a murderer, I'm sorry, in Ohio that was diagnosed with OCD. Previously, the statement was made that no one with OCD had ever murdered anyone. What are your thoughts on this? Well, I can't say that no one with OCD had ever murdered anyone. That would be a ridiculous statement. That'd be like saying that no one with hit and run OCD will ever run somebody over. I mean, come on. What I can say is that I've never seen an instance where it was because of OCD that somebody murdered somebody, right? I mean, I've never seen a fear of what if I were to murder someone and then they just go and they murder them just to see what it's like. That is what I'm talking about. I haven't seen is that. So you could be diagnosed with OCD and murder someone. It is a possibility, right? But I'm not blaming the OCD for the murder in that situation. I'd have to really see what was going on. Okay. We talked about that one already. Any advice with POCD fears? You're struggling so much with it and you're using ERP. Yes, my advice is to keep using your ERP, but to make sure you're really doing good response prevention. It isn't just about being exposed to something and then doing compulsions to neutralize it. It's about being exposed to something and doing response prevention. The key component in all of this is the response prevention treatment. E minus RP equals 0. If you do exposure without response prevention, you don't get better, right? You just stay the same. So, because without response prevention, what are you likely doing? You're likely doing compulsions. What maintains OCD? Compulsions. So again, it's not about I'm going to be exposed and I'm going to then get better. It's I'm going to be exposed and do good response prevention. And that is what is going to make me better. And that is what I suggest for you to really do. We are getting close to the end of time here, everyone. Well, not the end of time. Let me just say the end of the webinar. Maybe, maybe that's it. More than anything else. Let's see. And I do love the back and forth everyone's doing. I reject your spelling check. There we go. That's great. Here's a couple of things. Just remember this. And Beth, you said it there too. OCD is the doubting disorder, right? The goal is not to have an answer. The goal is to know that you can handle the question. I want for all of you to be able to live with doubt and uncertainty because you already do live with doubt and uncertainty, right? I have no guarantee that after this, I'm going to make it up the stairs. I might trip up the stairs, fall and hit my head, and this will be the last time anybody hears from me ever again. It is a possibility. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm still going to go walk up the stairs. I live with doubt. I live with uncertainty. And I'm going to just do that, right? That's what I am going to do. I hope that for all of you too. If you're looking for help with that, check us out at nocd.com. That's nocd.com. We're always available. Reach out to us. We will set up a time to chat with you to see if we're right for you. We do take more and more insurances all the time. We do work here in the United States and Canada and Australia and the UK. And we do work with OCD and hoarding and body-focused repetitive behaviors like trichotillomania and excoriation. And we work with tics and we work with depression and anxiety disorders and BDD. And we want to be there for you, your one-stop shop for help here at NoCD. And we also do our NoCD 411 sessions. So if you want more of a consult time with someone to talk about OCD or related conditions, maybe you have a friend who's not quite ready for primetime therapy or something, or a family member, we want to be there for that as well. Please go to nocd.com. And everyone, keep this in mind. OCD does not have your best interest at heart, but ERP does. So do the thing that's best for you. We'll see you again next week, everybody.
Shining so bright, yeah, yeah. Shining so bright, yeah, yeah.